Well, good morning. How are we doing? Are we okay? If you haven't been here for the last 2 weeks, you're probably wondering, why on earth did we just show a commercial in church? Is there a new revenue stream? I wish. It'd be cool to be sponsored, right? No, there's not a new revenue stream, but that is probably the best way that I can illustrate what we've been speaking about over the last couple of weeks as we introduced the series. We're in part 3 of the series we're doing called So This Is the New Year. And let me see if I can catch you up using that Allstate Mayhem commercial, which, by the way, is probably my favorite line of commercials. They're just awesome. But here's why we're using that, and here's why we're talking about that. Let me go back to part 1 of the series and explain where we're headed and what we're doing. What we discovered in part 1 is this, that all of us kind of agree, whatever word we use, whatever way we describe it or how we talk about it, all of us kind of agree that there's something in us that sometimes keeps us from doing what we know we should do and not doing what we shouldn't do. You know, there's something in us, and the best illustration that I can give to that and show the best kind of proof that I can give to that thing inside of us is right around New Year's time, because New Year's time we all set New Year's resolutions. And did you know this? Only 8% of New Year's resolutions work statistically, and that's a long-standing statistic. Every year they kind of interview a bunch of people and find out, and I've seen that statistic over the years. 8%. 8%. That's crazy. Only 8% of things. And it's kind of like there's something in us, a drive, an influence, whatever it is, something in us that kind of pushes us to go, yes, I know you're resolute to do this. I know you've decided you need to change that. I know you don't want to be the same as you were last year. Yes, you've decided. It's not going to work. Because there's something in us that seems to push us towards not doing the things we know we should and doing the things we know we shouldn't. And all of us sort of agree with that. And the reality is a lot of people ask why. As I've been studying this, I've gone online and looked at all the different articles, at all the different magazines, and some people come up with the solution that if you do it differently, if you set the resolution like this and time it like this and make the goal smaller and make sure you do this and put little things in place and do that, then it will be better. And guess what? Next year they test it again, and then another 8% make it work. Somehow it just doesn't seem to work, and that's, again, I've checked up to 2005. It's just been over and over and over again, 8%. Why is that? And what we said in the first week of the series, part 1 of the series, is that Christianity seems to have an explanation for that thing inside of us that keeps us from changing the things we want to change and not doing the things we don't want to do. There's something inside of us that explains that. And Christianity, uses different words for it, but the best way that I can describe it is Allstate Mayhem commercial, that there is a little bit of mayhem inside of each of us. And that thing in us, and we, if you think about it, you all kind of agree because that influences those smaller things. Maybe they're not small, but those smaller things like, this year I will exercise. This year I won't eat that cake. This year I'm going to wake up earlier. This year I'm going to do it differently. Those smaller things. But it also, if we think about it, influences those bigger, way more important things like, I need to change the way I do marriage. Otherwise, this thing's not going to work. I need to change the way I do relationships, or I need to break this dangerous habit. There's something in us that seems to hold us. And the best way I can describe it is there's a little bit of mayhem inside of each of us. And it's just there. Like Allstate says, mayhem is everywhere. Christianity kind of says mayhem is in everyone. So there's this thing that goes. So that was part 1. Part 2, we went on and said something huge, and that is that God really wants to help us. And He has put some things in place to help us navigate this mayhem. And I said very clearly that what we spoke about in part 2 is really hard to believe. But it's incredibly attractive if it's true. And the reason I said that is because last week we spoke about some, big things that God really wants to help. And one of the things we said, and this is so cool, that one of the reasons, the main reason Jesus came to earth, the main reason Jesus did what He did was because He saw the mayhem problem. And He saw that there's no way we can try to fix that. We try to fix it, New Year's resolution our way out of it, self-help our way out of it, but it just doesn't go away. He saw that there's a problem, so He said, I want to fix this. And the main thing He did was He took care of the spiritual repercussions and the eternal repercussions of the mayhem in us. So if you're here today and you've ever wondered, because this is something we do, if you've ever wondered, that stuff that I did, that thing that I did this week, last night, or years ago, could God ever accept me? Could I ever be okay with God? The answer is an overwhelming yes. Absolutely, because Jesus made it very, very clear that that mayhem that is inside of us doesn't need to separate us from God, doesn't need to have eternal consequences, doesn't need to have spiritual consequences anymore, because he died to cover that, to pay for that, to fix that. And he said, I want to give you this gift and say, hey, that doesn't need to be a problem. So Jesus took care of the spiritual consequences and the eternal consequences of the mayhem in us. But here's what's hard to believe, though. And this is crazy. But I'm telling you, if it's true, it's one of the most attractive things about Christianity. Because we all kind of get that there's mayhem in us, pushing us one way, pulling us one way, not doing the things we don't want to do, not doing the things we do want to do. You know what I mean. Mayhem is keeping us from doing what we want to do. And Jesus came along and said, not only do I want to take care of the spiritual consequences and the eternal consequences, but I want to help you navigate mayhem now. And so in some very real way, Christianity teaches that God enters your life and helps you and gives you the power, gives you the strength to do that. That's what we looked at last week. So we asked the Allstate question: are you in good hands? Are you in good hands? I'm telling you, Allstate is amazing. Are you in good hands? Because there's mayhem everywhere, and there's mayhem inside of us. And Christianity teaches, and life shows, that if you're in your own hands, 8% success rate in doing and changing and being those things that we don't want to do and be and change and do. 8% success rate. But if we somehow choose to go, you know what? Yeah, I admit there's mayhem. And I admit, I try. And somehow it goes with me. This drive is there. And I admit, in my own hands, I can't fix this. And Christianity teaches, if you place yourself in God's good hands, there is help. There is help to help not only change things, but help us navigate the mayhem that is everywhere, that just keeps trying to, that guy's face when he's spinning in that car going, there is mayhem doing that thing. And God says, Christianity teaches, there is help. But the question is, are you in good hands, or are you in your own hands? So that's what we've spoken about for the last couple of weeks. Really important stuff if you want to understand Christianity. I think really attractive stuff, if it is true. And listen, if you're here and you are not a typical church person, you're only here because someone said, I'll buy you lunch afterwards. You're just sitting here kind of getting through this, and lunch is going to be great. I'm so glad you're here. Or if you're here and you're not sure you believe this crazy stuff yet, like Jesus, the Son of God, how does that even work? I mean, that's weird. Yes, and I agree. It is hard to believe. Jesus rose from the dead. How does that even, I've never seen a miracle, a man rising from the dead. How does that even work? So if you're here and you struggle to believe that stuff, listen, I want to tell you two things. Number one, we never want to pressurize you to believe anything you don't believe. We think that's a little silly, because making someone believe something they don't believe is counterintuitive. You don't believe it. And making you try to believe something you don't believe isn't sustainable. So what's the point in that? What we're hoping to do, and this is the second thing, that we want to make this as safe a place and as comfortable a place for you to figure it out. And if you have questions and if you're arguing with me as I talk, that's great. I love it. You have the right and the permission to do that as you figure this stuff out, as we continue to talk about these crazy, amazing things that we truly believe. And there's good, solid reason for us to believe this. And we'll talk about that. And we have talked about that. Why do we believe Jesus rose from the dead? There's some good evidence that we can point to and that we can talk about. That, it's not just like we go, hey, blind faith, we hope this is true. No, there's some great evidence of witnesses who eventually gave their life for what they said they saw. It's just incredible stuff. But you have permission to relax. We're not going to pressurize you to do anything, say anything, believe anything, because we think that's unsustainable. You can just be. You can just enjoy, ask the questions, argue, do all that. It's really cool, and we love, love, love having you here. And that's why we want to acknowledge that some of the stuff is hard to believe, that some of the stuff is just tough to go with. And yet, if it's true, it's some of the most amazing things that you can do. So the question we've been asking, there is mayhem everywhere. And that mayhem, I think we go with the fact that mayhem's inside of us as well. And the question is, are you in good hands? Because that's possibly the only way that you can navigate through this mayhem as we go. So we have been talking about some really deep theological stuff over the last couple of weeks. And, I don't know if you guys left with your brains tired because it's like, wow, that's amazing. How do we do this stuff? This is big. This is very theological. So I promise that this week is going to be very practical. And I'm going to keep my promise. I promise it's going to be very practical, and for the rest of the series, we're also going to hit a lot of practical things on how do we navigate the mayhem. We needed to talk about the mayhem. We need to talk about the fact that anything that we try to do, if it's help that comes from my own self, will probably end up with 8%. But if God's involved in this thing, there's a chance that we can navigate this. But we want to get really, really practical today, because God's help, and here's the problem with God's help is invisible. How do you lean on that? It's hard. How do you go with that? We believe it's true, and I've felt it, many of you have felt it, but it's still invisible. And it's like, how do you put that into practice? So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at some advice, some instruction, a principle that God has kind of put in place, and this is true for all of Christianity for a long, long time, and this is something that truly is so practical, you can do it, you can start doing it today. And I'm actually going to let you start doing it before you leave today. That's how I told you you're going to get practical. So let's just do it. It's going to get really, really practical. I'm going to give you a way to do this today, even before we leave, okay? So very, very practical. And this thing, if you do it, I believe, is one of the most powerful things in helping us navigate not only the mayhem on the inside of us, but the mayhem all around us as well. Let me warn you, it will take a little bit of guts to do it, and it will take some commitment, but I'm telling you, it's incredibly powerful. And as you'll see, it's common sense. I mean, you almost don't even have to be a Christian to do this, and it will help you. It's a big, big deal, and it's very, very simple, and very, very powerful. To get us on the same page for where we're going, I want to tell you two things that I know about you. And I know this about you because I know this about me, and I know this about you because I've watched people, and it just seems to make so much sense, and I think you'll probably agree with these two things. But this is what I know about you. The first one is that you want to live your life wisely, right? No one in here is going, nah, I want to be stupid in every decision I make. No one's saying that. No one's saying, in my marriage, I'm going to do the dumbest things to be able to break the whole thing up. No, in my parenting, I want to ruin my kids. This is going to be awesome. No one's saying that. You want to live your life wisely for your family, in your marriage, in your relationships, in your finances, with friendships, morally. You want to do the wise thing. You want to live wisely. This is a driving factor among us, or at least it's a fear that kind of drives us. We worry about this, whether it drives us or not. We worry about this. We ask the questions when we have to make decisions. We go, is this the right decision? Will this end up being a good thing? Should I take this job? Should we move there? Should we leave here? Should I move in with him? Should I not move in with him? What do we do? How do I raise the kids? Should I do it this way? Should I do it this way? What do we do? Should we change schools? What's the best thing to do? Most of us are driven, all of us, I think, are driven by this pursuit, this drive that says, I want to live my life wisely. I want to do this thing well. It's just a drive. We all have that, I think. Very few people don't want to do that. So that's the first thing. You want to live your life wisely. I know that about you. The second thing that I know about you is this. You want to avoid pain, right? Nobody's like, yeah, let me get hurt. Nobody wants to get hurt. And I know there's the t-shirt that says no pain, no gain. I know that Nike's made a lot of money on that. I know that, okay? But the reality, the reason we even have a t-shirt is because we don't like pain. That wouldn't make any sense if everybody was like, pain, sweet, this is great. Nobody likes pain. And the gain part, the only reason the gain part is there is because that equals no pain later. But pain is the thing that drives us. The thing that I know about you is this: you want to avoid pain. We don't want to experience pain. And this is true in every part of our lives. When it comes to exercise, we don't like that. It's painful. This is why most of you have stopped doing that this year already, okay? Because we don't like the pain that it comes with. We just don't like it. We also want to avoid pain at work. That's why when we get a job, we look for a job that we will love. We look for a job that'll be comfortable and we'll enjoy. And you know what? On the rise right now is a different work culture. The minute it gets to the place where it's like, I don't like this anymore, guess what? There's a better job out there that's less painful and more comfortable. I'm going to do that. Why not change? Why not go that way? Why sit here and suffer through the pain of this job when there's a job out there that I can get that's not painful? It drives us, not only at work, not only through exercise, but in relationships as well. We want friendships that don't feel painful. Someone told me before the service that this is how the Minnesota Vikings looked last week. Apparently, if you're a Vikings fan, I did not make that up, okay? Someone told me that, but hey, we want friendships that don't feel painful. Friendships are built on the comfort level that we find with our friends, right? We want friends who build us up, don't break us down. That's what we want. And when people start getting too in your face and too painful and start going, and it feels too painful, what is the natural inclination inside of us? Bye-bye. Right? Because we want to avoid pain almost at all costs. We want to avoid pain financially as well. This is why we, save and retirement and all that kind of stuff. But the funny thing about, this is why we try not get into debt, because there's a drive, we want to avoid pain. But the problem is, and this is just interesting to me, the avoiding pain financially sometimes comes head to head and conflicts with other types of avoiding of pain, right? Because if I buy that nice stuff, then I'll feel comfortable and happy, right? But then the painful part of finances come in, and this guy, when you swipe this guy, how painful is it to swipe a piece of plastic? Not at all. It's wonderful. And if I go swish, and I can look good, or eat good, or feel good, or do good, or kind of calm my pain that I'm feeling now by distracting myself with that fun, this pain kind of conflicts with each other. The drive is I want to avoid pain, and that kind of sometimes when the bill arrives, creates more pain. So it's just a weird thing. And that's actually something we're going to talk about over the next 2 weeks. It's really important that our current pain, our present pain, is so powerful a motivator that we want to avoid this almost at all costs, that we're willing to pay the future pain that comes. We're willing to forget about what the future says, that we're willing to kind of do something here that'll hurt us later. At least we won't feel the pain now. We're going to talk about that. Very important messages coming up as we continue in the series about how to navigate mayhem. But we're going to talk about that. And that's just an interesting part about finances. Not only do we want to avoid pain or exercise and friendships and work and finances, but then also in marriage. We want to avoid pain in marriage, right? Which is interesting to me, because I think almost by definition, and don't get me wrong here, please, but I think almost by definition, marriage is painful. Don't get me wrong, because it's beautiful. And I think part of the reason we get married is because singleness is more painful. So we want to get married because, wow, it's going to be amazing. So pain kind of drives us a whole bunch. The reason I say marriage is painful is because, have you ever thought about it? Two people, completely different. They think differently. They speak differently, they evaluate differently, their dreams are different, their hopes are different. Even, Kristen and I talk a lot about this, my wife, that we almost have different languages. I'm a sensor, and so I take information in through my senses, what I see, what I hear, what I touch. She's intuitive, so she kind of just knows stuff. And she's right when she knows it. But I have no idea how she knows it. And then she tries to explain it. I'm like, I don't understand this language. You are speaking German. I don't get it. And so how is that? And because of all the changes and the stuff that you go through, you have to sacrifice. You have to learn. You have to compromise. You have to be selfless. And all of that is painful. All of that is painful. And the difficulty is this. You're laughing, sorry. I'm not making a big deal of this, right? Not at all. But it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But there's this pain element to it. And what happens so often is when we walk through marriage and it's a little too painful, our culture is going, well, forget marriage, throw in the white towel. Forget that. Why even try? Because we want to avoid pain. And then one of the biggest things for most people, if you have kids, you know this. But for kids, our families, we want our kids to avoid pain. And this drives us. We will do so many things. We will change things. We will be mean to other parents. We will do stuff. We will discipline too much sometimes. We will let them go and be crazy too much sometimes, all because we want them to avoid pain. And because one of the most painful things we experience is when our kids get in harm's way. That's something huge. We all want to avoid pain. What I know about you is that you want to avoid pain. It drives us, right? You want to avoid pain. The other thing is you want to live your life wisely. All of us do. It's what we want to do. That's what drives us. But here's the problem. And this is crazy. The problem is mayhem is everywhere, right? It's everywhere. And it hits us when we're not looking. I told you about my car accident a couple of weeks ago. Just driving in my lane. Just doing my thing. And I think, subconsciously we used the blind spot commercial because I didn't mean to, but the person didn't see the big thing in her blind spot and just kind of came over and crashed into me. Mayhem just happens. It's everywhere. And Christianity teaches, and I think we agree, that there is a little bit of mayhem inside of us too, so that no matter how wise you want to live your life, and no matter how badly you want to avoid pain, mayhem seems to pull you away from the wise things that you want to do and push you towards the things that will eventually cause you pain. It's so interesting. And that this means that no matter how accomplished you become, no matter how great a job you have, no matter how wealthy you become, no matter how educated you are, no matter how enlightened and insightful you are, no matter how much of a leader you are, whatever it is, all of that, and this is a little harsh, all of that is somewhat tainted by the mayhem inside of us. All of that is somewhat tainted by the mayhem inside of us. And this is why some of the most influential politicians, some of the greatest Hollywood stars, some of the strongest leaders, some of the best, tele-evangelists even, all these Christians and preachers, this is why they do dumb things. And we see it publicly. They do dumb things because mayhem follows us everywhere, and no one is immune, no matter how strongly we try to do that. And so the reality is, I think, we need help. We need help. And that's why last week was so incredibly important, because God wants to help. And I know it's hard to believe because it's spiritual and all that stuff. And does it really help? Does it really change things? Christianity teaches, yes, it does. God really does. But what we're looking at today is a very practical, visible, tangible thing that God has put in place to help us do this as well. Help us navigate the mayhem that pulls us away from living wisely like we want to and avoiding pain like we want to. In fact, what we're going to look at today speaks into these exact things, these exact drives, and gives us a practical thing that we can do to help us navigate that. This thing, this principle, this idea that is so powerful, has the power to help us either exacerbate the mayhem or help us minimize the mayhem, is the people that we surround ourselves with. The people we surround ourselves with have the potential, and this is huge, have the potential to literally help us create some of our greatest regrets or help us avoid those regrets, or overcome the regrets that we already have. The people who surround us have the potential to do that. They have the potential to make us make some of the dumbest decisions or follow through on the best decisions. We know this. If you're a parent and you have a teenager, this is your message, right? This is like your flag you're waving all the time. Make sure, because they will influence you. We say that all the time, and then we grow up and we think it's not for me anymore. No. This is why some of the smartest people make some of the dumbest decisions, because the people around them. Solomon, who was one of the wisest people to ever have lived. In some circles believed to be the wisest man to ever have lived. And this is not just legend. He was the third king of Israel. And so, he had to rule a country. That takes a lot. He was the third king of Israel. And his contemporaries in the Middle East area and in northern Africa, all the kings and queens would literally travel to Solomon to go, how do you do this? How do you figure this stuff out? They would seek his wisdom because he was so wise. He's famously known for the biggest ask he ever asked of God was, help make me wise. And then he lived it out. And then he took it upon himself to study wisdom, to study people, to watch as people did their life, to watch, okay, those people are doing life well. What is it that they're doing? Those people seem to be crashing and burning sometimes. What is it that they're doing? And he wrote a bunch of this stuff down. And the historians in Israel took the stuff that he wrote down and gathered it and put it into several books. One of them is a book, Ecclesiastes, crazy, interesting book that's recorded in the Old Testament in your Bible. And you see this, and he talks about how he took it upon himself to study and to find out, how does life work? What's the best thing we can do? And he wrote all that down. Other stuff that he wrote down is recorded in the book of Proverbs, which has become super famous to be a book of wisdom that can be applied. And in this book, he's got all the stuff about wisdom and, danger and how does it work and how do you navigate all of that. He's got all of that written down, and right in the middle of the book, he's got this one little line, 2 lines actually, that I think is so poignant and speaks into what we're talking about today and helps us avoid mayhem. And I want to look at this very briefly because it is so, so powerful. Here's what he says in this book. He says, walk with the wise and become wise. Simple. For a companion of fools suffers harm. There are those two things. So we want to avoid pain, harm, right? And we want to do our life wisely. It's in us. Nobody would say, do you want to mess your life up? Nobody would say, yeah, this is great. Nobody says that. We want to live our life wisely. And Solomon, after watching people, after studying from the perch of being a king of a nation, he said, okay, here's the best thing that I found. Not only have I seen this, but I think this is a principle. If you walk with the wise, you'll become wise. And what does that mean? Who are the wise? It's so hard to explain this because everyone has mayhem. Nobody's perfect. You'll never find somebody that is like the Yoda doesn't exist, right? Okay, you'll never find this incredibly just perfect person because everyone has mayhem in them. But I think a good definition is someone who's pursuing wisdom. Someone who is intentionally trying to do their life, their marriage, their parenting, their finances, their morals, their faith. Someone who's trying to figure life out and do life well. And as you look at them and go, wow, I like the way they parent. Wow, I like the way that he speaks to her and she speaks to him. I like that. I want to be more like that. I want to do that. I think that's who the wise is. And if you choose to walk with the wise, people who going, and this is part of wisdom as well, people who acknowledge the mayhem in them. Because if they're not acknowledging the mayhem in them, I say steer clear because it's not true. People who acknowledge the mayhem in them and go, I need help too. And say, you know what? Part of my help is going, God needs to help me because I can't overcome this. But people who are wise, Solomon says, if you want to be wise, you want to do life wisely, walk with those people. What's interesting is he doesn't say, read their books. He doesn't say, hear what they say and do what they say. He doesn't say, come and ask them a question and then give it. All of that stuff's fantastic. It's great. But you know what the problem with that stuff is? That's theory. That's ideas. That's, their life and their ideas. You know why walking with them is so much more powerful than just reading a book, than just having a conversation, than just asking a few questions? Because you get to see them. You get to see how they live out what they wrote in their book. You get to see when they are struggling with the mayhem, how do they handle that? You get to see when mayhem has crashed into them and it's just not working and they're at their weakest point, then what? And you get to see when they're doing well and when they're not. You get to see when they're happy and when they're sad. When you do life with someone, it's not just theory. Because you know what? When you read a book, you go, well, I can't live up to that because there's mayhem in me. When you walk with someone and you engage with someone who's wise, someone who's doing life, someone who's going down that road, you get to see the real life stuff and they get to see you. They get to see me. And if I say, I want to be wise, and they kind of looking into my life going, you know what? I love your desire. I love where it's going. Do you hear how you speak to your wife? Do you hear? It changes the whole dynamic. It's not theory. It's not you go now change and apply this thing. No, it's walking with. And when you're rubbing shoulders with and you're doing life with, everything is different. Everything changes. It becomes real. It becomes tangible. It becomes actual. It's not just a theory. It's not just spiritual. It's life. So Solomon says, you want to do life wisely? The best way that I can see you do that, actually apply that wisdom that you're trying to learn, is if you walk, do life with the wise. Then, what I've seen, people who do that, they seem to become wise. Simple, yet pretty deep, pretty powerful. A little hard to do, but wow, it'll change everything. We say we need help. Life together, walking with, will bring that help. Then the counterpoint is also true, but with a slight different nuance. He says this, for a companion of fools suffers harm. He doesn't say a companion of fools becomes foolish. That's interesting. You walk with the wise, you become wise, but a companion of fools doesn't become foolish. You can be the wisest, smartest, most educated, most successful person, but you've seen smart people make dumb decisions, right? I think part of that is the mayhem. I think part of that is who they're around. Sometimes who you're around will make you sound like this bad idea is a great idea. So here's this thing. Companion of fools doesn't necessarily grow foolish, but they suffer harm. And you know, who are fools? You know, it's so hard to talk about that and not sound judgmental. But as in your life, as you look at people, I think the best way to look at this is, who are the people in your life that you're hanging out and you go, I don't know if they're being intentional about how they're walking their marriage. I don't know if that's how I want to do it, how they're doing kids. They're a little more reckless. They're a little less intentional than I want to be. I don't know how best to describe that, but in your life, what's the standard you're looking for? And if you're constantly around them, if you're constantly around that kind of parenting, that kind of marriage, that kind of stuff, then, and I know this sounds weird and oogie, but the reality is, as Solomon watched, when people are the companion of fools, doing life less intentionally, a little more recklessly, and not trying to pursue wisdom, eventually you suffer harm in some way. The best illustration I can give is this. You can be the wisest person, best driver in the world, most conscientious person in the world. If you're in the back seat of a car and someone who's reckless and unintentional and doesn't care about the laws of the road is driving, as great a driver as you are, if you're in the back seat of the car and they're driving, eventually, if they have an accident, which will likely happen sometime, because mayhem is everywhere, you can be the best driver and mayhem could hit you. But the chances are, if you're driving with someone who doesn't care about the mayhem, kind of goes with it a little less intentional, a little more reckless, eventually if they have an accident, what's going to happen to you? You're going to suffer harm just because you're there. And so Solomon says, as I've watched people, as I've watched my own life, and the crazy things, if you know the story of Solomon, he kind of forgot this principle at the end of his life. It's kind of sad. Or somewhere in between, maybe he came back at the end. But the reality is, this is true for all of us, even Solomon. You want to be wise? Walk, be with, do life with the wise. For a companion of fools suffers harm. Very simple, common sense principle. And I'm telling you, mayhem is everywhere. Mayhem is everywhere. And it's trying to get us. It's inside of us. And if we don't seek help, it will influence our life. So the question I have for us today is this. Who is influencing you? Who is influencing you? And many of us will go, well, at least I don't have fools influencing me, but I don't really have wise. I think if there's a vacuum, it probably doesn't lead to wisdom. He said, walk with the wise, and you'll become wise. I'm telling you, the principle that Solomon saw is those people who chose to do this intentionally and consistently throughout their lives. And Solomon's the best example. Intentionally and consistently throughout their lives, as they walked with the wise, they seemed to become wise. Companion of fools suffered harm. So, who is influencing you? Okay, so I told you that this is going to be super practical. So practically speaking, here's what I want to do now. I want to tell you very clearly, please, 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 please make sure you have a group of people that you're walking with that are wise. Please make sure that you have a group of people that you're walking with. And you can do this in many ways, I know that. But this is so important to us as a church that we've literally designed our church with this in mind. Because we believe that the best life change, the best growth, the best way we can live our life happens when you're doing it with other people who are trying to do the same thing. So we've designed our church around this, and there are two very specific areas that you can get involved in these things through these two areas here. And those two areas are this: community group and a service team. Community group and a service team. Let me explain quickly what they are. It's so important. And again, like I said, you can do this in any way. And if you don't have a space for this now, we do this so that you can find this with us. We do this so that you can find this with us. A community group is basically a group of people who choose to get together for two purposes: for spiritual growth and authentic community. Spiritual growth and authentic community. And they choose to walk together and do life together for an extended season of time, for 12 to 18 months. And they do that and they walk together. It's not just a Bible study, it's doing life together. It's walking with the wise for an extended period of time. It's in this place that you can find a place where you belong. It's in this place where you can find a place where you care for one another and find deeper care, that you actually know when anniversaries are, you actually know when birthdays are, you actually know what's going on in people's lives, and you can actually care. This is also the place where you can find accountability, not weird, creepy accountability, but accountability, because that's weird. When churches do that, it's like, whoa, where are you going? Accountability, what I mean by that is when people get together and they go, hey, I want to live wisely. I want to do my life like this. Would you help me do that? And that's just beautiful when you strengthen each other. That's the kind of accountability that's there. And we can grow spiritually and in authentic community. That's what community groups are. And it literally is living out, walk with the wise. I'm telling you, this has changed my life. Over and over again, not just once, but over and over again. Every time I'm in a group, because I've been in many groups now, every time I'm in a group, I find a group of people who are wise in different ways, and it challenges me. And not only does it help me navigate the mayhem on the inside because I'm a better husband because of the people that have surrounded me. I'm a better parent because of the people that have surrounded me. It's a mirror. Sometimes I go, oh gosh, that's not how I should do this. I'm doing it like this. They're doing it different. And it changes me. So it helps me navigate the mayhem in me. But also, it, funnily enough, helps us navigate the mayhem outside that's everywhere. When I had that car accident, I actually, Florida insurance, how do you navigate that? I'm clueless, and this car just happened. I'm like freaking out, going, this is awful. What's going on? So I'm sitting at the body shop, and I'm sitting there for way longer than I wanted to sit there. I'm going, what do I do? Insurance, they're going to charge me. Well. So I called someone who was in a previous community group of mine. And this person just literally, he helped connect me to someone who really knows, and it's helped process so much. So not only does it help me navigate the mayhem inside, a community group, walking with the wise, helps you navigate the mayhem outside as well. It's amazing. It's life-changing. It's huge. It's so, so important. So community groups, we're actually registering community groups right now. You can sign up if you're not in a group. If you are in a group, keep going. Do this consistently and intentionally for the rest of your life. It'll make you wise. Excuse me. If you're not in a group, you can sign up by January 31st, and we're forming groups very soon, and we'd love to help you connect and try to figure out how to walk with the wise as best as we can here at Citrus Point. Second one is the service teams, and this is less obvious, and the reason I say that is because usually when you think of a service team, you think about fulfilling a need at a church, and I understand that, and it does do that, so I don't want to pretend like I'm like, this is all for you, and don't worry, you're actually going to help us as well. I'm not trying to pretend that's not true. Okay, that is true. But what I have found in my life is when I have served with other people, there is a level of relationship that I find with those people that you sometimes don't find when you're not doing something meaningful and purposeful with another person. It's amazing how it affects me. And I can point to different people that I wasn't necessarily in a group with them, but I served alongside them, and they became some of the best, closest friends and influences in my life, and I'm so grateful for it. Think about it. If you are kind of serving together and there's a group of middle school students and one of them looks at you and tells you, I'm struggling because there's a bully and they're bullying me, and you help them navigate that mayhem, and you help this kid see it differently, and you help this student change, oh my gosh, there's something that happens in you, and you're doing this alongside other people. It's so purposeful. It's so meaningful. You're changing the life of someone else and helping them navigate mayhem. It's amazing. It does something to the relationship. If you are working with kids and a kid looks at you and says, I'm nervous that my family's not going to make it. My parents are struggling and I don't know how to deal with it. And you're another voice to help that child navigate that. And you're doing that alongside. There's some meaning and purpose in that changes you. And as you do that with people, fighting to do what's wise, not only in our lives, but in the lives of others as well, it is so powerful, and it's an incredible way to walk with the wise. Sometimes this is also an easier thing to commit to, because this is a long-term thing, and we are going to have short-term groups as well, but this is a little more long-term. And by the way, if you sign up for group, you're not like committing your life away. There's no blood signing and stuff like that. You can try before you buy as well. You know, you can check it out and go, these people are all weird. They're not wise at all. I'm out of here. You can do that, okay? So you're free to do that. There's no commitment, but that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to connect people to walk with the wise. This one is easier because you just come and serve on a Sunday, and slowly you get to know, slowly you open up, slowly they open up, and wow, the people that we walk with in this is just incredible. So I told you we're going to be practical. If you want to sign up to get in a community group or a service team, easiest way to do it, you can literally pull your phone out right now. I told you can do it before you leave. You can pull your phone out because we have an app, Citrus Point Church app. You can download that, and literally, if you click connect or serve, there's a form there that you can sign up, register for group, or sign up for a team. You can do this online as well. But I'm telling you guys, please hear me. This is not, yes, service teams is part of, help at the church and all that stuff. But I'm telling you, Solomon watched people. Many of you have experienced this. I have experienced this. Mayhem is everywhere. And there's no, if you try to do it on your own, 8% of the time will you probably figure it out. That's not good statistics. I'm telling you, God says, I want to help you, and one of the ways he helps is by saying, walk with the wise. Walk with the wise if you want to grow wise, because a companion of fools suffers harm. And if you can choose to walk with the wise, and there's two ways to do it here at Citrus Point. We want to help you do that. We're committed to this. We're fighting for this. If you walk with the wise, I think that desire in you to be wise will be easier. And as much as we can in a broken world, we'll be able to avoid the harm that constantly tries to come our way, both externally, as much as in a broken world we can, and that internal mayhem that seems to try to wreak havoc and pull us away from wisdom and push us towards pain all the time. Walk with the wise, and you will become wise. For a companion of fools suffers harm. Would you please commit to do this consistently and intentionally, because it'll change your life. Let me pray for us, and we'll get out of here. Father, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much that you looked at us, and even though you saw mayhem, you saw people you love. And you said, I don't want mayhem to get in the way. And so, Jesus, thank you for dying for us, paying the price for mayhem, so there's no spiritual consequences anymore as we put our trust in you, as we put ourselves in those good hands. There's no eternal consequences anymore for the mayhem that's made us do stupid things sometimes. Thank you, God, for that. Thank you. And then thank you, God, for the help that you give. And thank you for pointing us to walk with the wise. Because if we do, as we do, we become wise. Thank you, God, for that. I pray you help us commit to this, walk in this. For those who are kind of questioning, let them just try. Let them just try and see where it leads. Thank you, Father. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks so much for being here. Don't miss next week. We're going to talk about some deep, big things. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.